The turkey was frozen solid. Not, needs a few hours to thaw, frozen. Not, leave it in warm water, frozen. It was rock hard. Like it had never planned on becoming dinner. I stood in the kitchen staring at it, my breath coming out in small white clouds. The heating system had been acting strange all week. It made clicking sounds. Sometimes it turned on. Sometimes it didn't. Mom said they'd call someone. After the holidays. After. That word again. After always meant never. My phone buzzed against the marble counter. It vibrated once. Then again. Then again. A group chat notification. The name at the top said. Holiday Bliss Sparkles. Mom created it. I swallowed. A photo loaded. There she was. My mother, Susan, holding a champagne flute, smiling like the world had finally given her peace. Next to her, my father Jeffrey leaned back in a linen shirt. Relaxed. Light. Free. And behind them, my twin sisters Ashley and Jessica were already wearing oversized sunglasses. They were clinking glasses. First-class cabin. No mistaking it. The caption read. Finally, some peace. Then another message came. Simple and efficient. Boarding now. See you in 10 days. House alarm is set. Don't wait up. I looked at the turkey again. I was 13. I didn't know how to cook a turkey. I didn't know how to fix a furnace. And apparently, I wasn't worth a plane ticket. I didn't cry. That's the strange part. You'd expect tears. You'd expect screaming. You'd expect a message back that said, "Did you forget me?" But I didn't send anything. I just stood there. In the cold. Realizing something that would take years to fully understand. Family is a word people use when it benefits them. And right now, I wasn't a benefit. If you love emotional stories that hit hard and feel real, make sure you subscribe. You don't want to miss what's coming next. Because this story, it doesn't stay small. The silence in the house felt thick. Heavy. Like it had weight. I tried to cook. I really did. I Googled how to cook turkey fast. Every answer assumes something simple. That you had heat. I opened the freezer again. In the back corner, under a bag of peas, I found a frozen burrito. The wrapper was covered in frost. But it was food. I put it in the microwave. Pressed start. The hum filled the kitchen. For a few seconds, it felt like life. Then. A sharp pop. Darkness. Complete. The microwave died. The refrigerator stopped humming. The house went silent. Not quiet. Silent. The kind that makes your ears ring. I stood there. The cold that had been creeping slowly now rushed in all at once. Like it had been waiting. My breath disappeared into the dark. Still no panic. I calculated. One room. Blankets. Coat. Closed doors. Survive the night. That's when the light swept across the window. Bright. White. Sharp. Headlights. For one small, stupid second. I thought they came back. Maybe guilt hit them. Maybe someone said, "Wait. Alyssa." I ran to the window. It wasn't our sedan. It was a matte black SUV. Huge. Still. Idling like it owned the driveway. A man stepped out. Tall. Wool coat. No rush. No hesitation. He walked like the ground already belonged to him. The knock hit the door hard. Deep. Echoing through the cold hallway. I opened it. I knew who he was. I had only seen him at funerals. In background whispers. Intense conversations. Uncle Robert. The black sheep. The billionaire. The dangerous one. He didn't smile. Didn't greet me. He looked at my face. Then my breath in the air. Then the dark house behind me. They set the alarm, he said calmly. But they didn't set up autopay for the electric bill. He stepped inside. Didn't wait. Didn't ask. He removed one glove slowly and checked his watch. Uncle Robert, I whispered. His eyes were gray. Cold. Not cruel. Analytical. Like he was reading numbers. Pack a bag, Alyssa. Where are we going? Away from here. No softness. No pity. Just a decision. I ran upstairs. I didn't grab toys. I didn't grab pictures. I grabbed clothes. School books. Laptop. 4 minutes. When I came back down, he was staring at the frozen turkey. He didn't laugh. Didn't comment long. Leave it, he said. Let it rot. It suits them. I stepped outside. The SUV interior was warm. Leather. Controlled air. Silence. As we drove away, I looked at my house in the rearview mirror. It disappeared into the dark. And I didn't know it yet. But I had just crossed a border. Not a physical one. A psychological one. I was leaving the world of the discarded. And entering the world of architects. Living with Uncle Robert wasn't comforting. It wasn't warm. It wasn't healing. It was structured. His house sat on a cliff overlooking the ocean. Concrete. Glass. Angles. It didn't have cozy corners. It had sight lines. You could see everything. For months, I tried to disappear. I moved quietly. Ate fast. Spoke less. Retreated early. I thought invisibility was rent. One evening, he found me in the library. Sitting in shadow. Watching him work. You're doing it again, he said without looking up. Doing what? Trying to shrink. I froze. He looked at me then. You think silence makes you smaller. Pause. You're wrong. He pointed to a blueprint. Tell me what's wrong. I looked. Lobby. Elevators. Offices. It's inefficient, I said slowly. The desk faces the sun. Reception will squint all afternoon. Elevators too far. Traffic will jam. He smiled. Sharp. Exactly. He leaned back. They ignored you. It wasn't a question. They treated you like furniture. My chest tightened. But while they posed for pictures, you watched. He tapped the paper. You see cracks because you lived in one. That night, he didn't comfort me. He redefined me. You are not invisible. You are observant. Silence isn't weakness. It's data. And that was the moment something shifted. He didn't offer sympathy. He offered strategy. The gift of the shadow, he called it. The ability to see truth because no one bothers hiding it from you. From that day forward, my education began. Not dolls. Not games. Contracts. Structural engineering. Negotiation. Control. Architecture, he said once, is behavior control. If you shape the structure, you shape the people inside it. At 14, I was attending site visits. At 15, I was in boardrooms. At 16, I knew how to read a liar. Meanwhile, my phone buzzed with vacation photos. Bahamas. Aspen. Alps. Smiles. Filters. Captions like Family Time Red Heart. I stopped looking. They were facades. And I had learned to look past facades. By 16, I understood leverage. By 17, I understood power. But there was one lesson left. And it came in the form of a desk. I asked for one. He asked how much. $800. He slid a check across the table. $5,000. Don't buy a desk, he said. Build a sanctuary. And that's where everything changed. The check felt heavy in my hand. $5,000. Not for comfort. Not for decoration. For authority. Don't buy a desk, Uncle Robert said again, watching me carefully. Design control. He wasn't smiling. He was measuring me. I went to my room that night and stared at the space differently. It wasn't a bedroom anymore. It was unfinished territory. And if I was going to survive in his world, I needed territory. Building power. The next 3 months changed me. Not dramatically. Not loudly. Slowly. Dangerously. I tore up the carpet myself. Concrete underneath. Cold. Hard. Honest. I liked it. I painted the walls a deep slate gray. Not soft gray. Not cozy. Gray that absorbed light instead of reflecting it. Gray that didn't beg for attention. I sketched my desk for weeks before building it. L-shaped. Steel frame. Wide surface. No wobble. I found a local welder and negotiated the price down by pointing out flaws in his welds. You missed penetration here, I said calmly. He blinked at me. You're 14. And you missed penetration here, I repeated. The price dropped by $600. I learned something important that day. Most adults don't expect resistance from someone young. So they crumble when they meet it. When the desk arrived, I tested every bolt. Every angle. I installed soundproofing. Adjusted lighting. Placed the chair precisely where I wanted it. When it was finished, I called him in. He didn't praise. He inspected. Ran a finger across the weld seams. Tested the lamp arm. Stood still for a long time. Then. One nod. Good. That nod meant more than affection ever could. It meant. You are capable. You are not decorative. You are structural. And something inside me stopped waiting to be loved. The ghost messages. Meanwhile. My phone never stopped buzzing. Mom posted a photo in Aspen. Caption. Family ski trip. Missing someone special, red heart. Missing. That word again. Ashley commented. Wish you were here. Jessica added heart emojis. I stared at the screen. If someone asked you right now. What hurts more? Being ignored? Or being publicly remembered like an accessory? Because let me tell you. The second one cuts deeper. It's performative. It's strategic. They needed the narrative of a complete family. Even if I wasn't in it. So I muted the group chat. Not blocked. Muted. Silence became a boundary. Boardrooms at 15. By 15, I was sitting in rooms full of executives twice my age. I didn't speak much. I listened. Robert would glance at me sometimes during negotiations. Not to protect me. To test me. After meetings, he would ask. Who's desperate? Who's lying? Who's overextended? I answered without hesitation. Because I recognized it. I grew up with it. You can spot financial panic the same way you spot emotional panic. Micro twitches. Overconfidence. Forced laughter. He never corrected me. And that was confirmation. I wasn't a child in training. I was a quiet weapon. The one thing I never asked. I never asked him why. Why he came that night. Why he took me. Why he paid. Why he cared. And he never explained. It was never framed as rescue. It was framed as acquisition. Cold. Clear. Efficient. And strangely, that felt safer than love. Because love can leave. Contracts don't. Graduation at 17. I graduated high school early. No party. No balloons. Just paperwork. Mom texted. So proud of you. We'll celebrate soon. We didn't. Soon never came. I went straight into architecture school. Funded entirely by Robert. An infrastructure investment, he called it. I graduated top of my class. Not because I needed validation. But because excellence was control. At 24, I launched my own firm. At 26, I was designing commercial towers. At 28, my name was in industry magazines. I built structures that shaped skylines. But more importantly, I built structures that shaped behavior. Control the entry points. Control the lighting. Control the flow. Control the psychology. Buildings are never neutral. Neither are families. The call at 3:47 a.m. The phone rang at 3:47 a.m. I already knew. Hospitals don't call at that hour for good news. Robert's voice was weak when I arrived. Not emotional. Just failing. He refused the hospital. Structural compromise, he whispered. Unrepairable. Even dying, he spoke in engineering terms. 2 days before the end, he called me into his bedroom. Ocean visible through floor-to-ceiling glass. Waves steady. Controlled chaos. On the nightstand was a sealed manila envelope. That, he said quietly, is the demolition order. My stomach tightened. Do not open it until the reading. I won't. They will come, he said. Who? Your parents. The word felt foreign. They think I am an ATM. His grip tightened around my wrist. Strong. Still strong. They think you are the janitor. Pause. Don't let them in. Not the house. Not the head. He died on a Tuesday morning. Between 4 and 5 a.m. Efficient. Clean. No dramatic speeches. No apologies. I didn't cry. I handled logistics. Called the lawyer. Secured assets. Locked gates. Grief would come later. If at all. The funeral performance. The service was supposed to be small. Private. Controlled. At 10:55 a.m., 3 stretched limousines rolled up the gravel drive. Rented. I recognized the fleet branding. Doors opened dramatically. Out stepped Susan. Black silk. Oversized sunglasses. Veil. Jeffrey behind her. Ashley and Jessica live streaming. I could see the phones angled perfectly. Tears. No redness. Just performance. My mother collapsed into my father's arms loudly. Poor Robert, she sobbed. 15 years. No contact. But now. Public grief. I stood in a charcoal suit I designed myself. Sharp lines. Clean silhouette. They walked past me. No recognition. No eye contact. Still the invisible one. I heard Susan whisper loudly. Thank God he never married. The estate should cover the renovations. That was when something inside me shifted again. They weren't mourning. They were budgeting. The first direct confrontation. After the burial, they cornered me near the hearse. Jeffrey looked at me like I was staff. You look tired, he said. Translation. You look small. We'll take it from here, Susan added, patting my arm lightly. Where are the house keys? House. Their tone implied ownership. I felt it then. The full architecture of their mindset. To remain the golden family, they needed a failure. They needed me to be small. Because if I wasn't, their entire self-image collapsed. The house is sealed until tomorrow, I said calmly. Sealed? Ashley snapped. It's ours. Tomorrow, I repeated. Then I turned my back. And walked away. I didn't rush. I didn't explain. Power doesn't argue. It schedules. The law firm. The conference room was designed for intimidation. Mahogany. Cold air. Tall windows. My family sat together. United. Confident. Already spending money in whispers. Scrolling through properties. Jeffrey tapping his watch impatiently. They looked at me once. Pity. Annoyance. Still seeing the 13-year-old in the cold kitchen. The lawyer entered. Thin folder. No briefcase. He sat. Adjusted glasses. Robert preferred efficiency, he began. Jeffrey interrupted. Just read the numbers. The lawyer ignored him. He opened the folder. To my brother Jeffrey. And the room began to change. Slowly. Like pressure building under concrete. We stop here. Because what happens next detonates everything. The truth is about to surface. And once it does, there is no going back. The lawyer adjusted his glasses. No drama. No hesitation. Just paperwork. To my brother Jeffrey, he read. I leave you the debt you accrued in 1998. The promissory note for the failed venture is hereby forgiven. You are now solvent. You are welcome. Jeffrey blinked. What? He snapped. That was written off years ago. Where's the cash? The lawyer didn't react. He turned the page. To my sister-in-law, Susan. I leave you the silence you gave your daughter. May it bring you the same comfort it brought her. The air changed. It got thinner. Susan's mouth opened. I don't understand. What does that mean? It meant everything. The lawyer continued. And finally, to my niece, Alyssa, the architect of her own life. He paused. My family leaned forward. Hope flickered in their eyes. I leave the entirety of my estate. The firm. The properties. The investment portfolios. The residual assets. Everything. Silence. 3 seconds. Exactly 3. Then it exploded. That's illegal. Jeffrey slammed his hand on the table. He was senile. Susan cried. She manipulated him. She was his nurse. Ashley shouted. We're contesting this. Jessica added. They were loud. Panicked. Desperate. I didn't move. I didn't blink. I watched them unravel. The way you watch a structure collapse after you remove the support beams. Slow. Predictable. Almost boring. The lawyer raised one hand. There is one more document. The room froze again. Hope returned. Desperate hope. Jeffrey leaned forward. This is the real will. No, the lawyer said calmly. He slid a single yellowed sheet across the table. Toward my father. My heart slowed. I recognized the handwriting before I even leaned in. Sharp. Angular. Roberts. Next to it. 2 loopy signatures. Careless. Fast. What is this? Susan whispered. A loan agreement, the lawyer said. Dated December 24th, 15 years ago. December 24th. The frozen turkey. The empty house. The dark kitchen. My hands went cold. You borrowed $500,000 from Robert Miller, the lawyer continued, voice steady, to cover gambling debts and lifestyle maintenance. Jeffrey's face went pale. That's private. It became relevant, the lawyer replied, when collateral was involved. Collateral. That word felt heavy. Like concrete dropped from a height. He pointed to the clause at the bottom. In exchange for this sum, Jeffrey and Susan Miller agree to waive all parental claim to Alyssa Miller. They agree to transfer physical custody to Robert Miller and cease all financial and emotional support. The child becomes the burden of the lender. The room tilted. Not emotionally. Physically. For a moment, I thought I might faint. Not because I was shocked. But because everything suddenly made sense. They hadn't forgotten me. They hadn't neglected me. They had sold me. For $500,000. That was my number. That was the value assigned to my existence. I looked at my parents. Waiting. Waiting for shame. For regret. For anything human. Jeffrey cleared his throat. We were in a bind. There it was. Not sorry. Not remorse. Just explanation. He wouldn't help us unless we agreed, Susan said quickly. We had no choice. No choice. I repeated quietly. You lived in a mansion. Jeffrey snapped. You had the best schools. We gave you a better life. My chest tightened. But not from pain. From clarity. It wasn't abandonment. It was transaction. We sacrificed, Susan sobbed. But her tears were for herself. Not for me. You sacrificed me, I said. My voice didn't shake. It didn't rise. It didn't crack. It was calm. Controlled. Architect-level calm. It cost you exactly $500,000, I continued. And you spent it. Jeffrey pointed at the lawyer. This is entrapment. He can't hold that against us. You got your share, I said. I stood up slowly. The chair scraped loudly. The sound echoed. 15 years ago, I said, looking directly at them, you traded a daughter for a lifestyle. Pause. The transaction is complete. The air conditioner hummed. That was the only sound. If you've ever felt something like this, if you've ever realized your pain wasn't an accident but a decision, subscribe. Because stories like this remind us we're not alone. And what comes next? It changes everything. Susan reached for me. Alyssa, we're your parents. I looked at her hand. Trembling. Not from love. From fear. The ATM was closed. No, I said softly. You're borrowers. And your credit is no good here. I walked out. Not fast. Not dramatic. Just steady. Through the lobby. Past the receptionist. Out into the sunlight. For the first time in my life. I wasn't confused about who I was. But clarity has consequences. Because clarity doesn't make pain disappear. It just makes it sharp. The aftershock. That night, I didn't go home. I drove. Past the city. Past the suburbs. Past neighborhoods filled with families who would never understand. I parked near the ocean. Sat in silence. 500,000. I repeated it in my head. What does that buy? A house. Cars. Vacations. Apparently. A daughter. And here's the part no one tells you about betrayal. The first feeling isn't anger. It's doubt. Was I worth that much? Or only that much? I leaned my head back against the seat. Closed my eyes. And for the first time in years, I cried. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just silent tears sliding down. For the 13-year-old girl standing in a freezing kitchen. For the part of me that thought maybe she wasn't enough. She wasn't unlovable. She was liquid. Converted into cash. And suddenly, the entire architecture of my childhood stood exposed. The cold house. The group chat. The silence. It wasn't neglect. It was contract enforcement. The shift inside me. But something unexpected happened. Instead of breaking, I stabilized. Like reinforced steel under pressure. They didn't choose someone else over me. They chose money. Which meant it was never about me. And that realization, it freed me. Because if you were never the problem, you stopped trying to fix yourself. The next morning, my phone exploded. Calls. Voicemails. Threats. We'll sue. This won't stand. You owe us. Oh. That word again. I deleted the messages. All of them. No replies. Silence. Data. The decision. By noon, I had 3 options. Ignore them and move forward. Settle quietly to avoid public mess. Finish what Robert started. I sat in my sanctuary. Gray walls. Steel desk. Controlled lighting. I stared at the ocean outside. And I realized something. This wasn't about revenge. It was about precedent. If I allowed them to frame this as cruelty, they would rewrite history. They would turn themselves into victims. And I would become the cold, ungrateful daughter who stole everything. No. Architecture matters. Narratives are structures too. And if you don't design them, someone else will. I picked up my phone. Called Mr. Sterling. I want full legal insulation, I said. And I want the contract filed publicly. Silence on the other end. You're certain? He asked. Yes. If the truth hurt, let it hurt loudly. Because secrecy protects the guilty. Not the sold. The first crack. 2 days later, the story leaked. Not through me. Through documentation. Local business news picked it up. Then larger outlets. Prominent couple signed away custody for $500,000 loan. Names attached. Dates attached. Signatures visible. My parents stopped calling. Ashley and Jessica went silent online. Susan posted a vague quote about family betrayal. Jeffrey deleted his social media. Public shame is different than private shame. Public shame has weight. And it was settling. But here's the twist. I didn't feel victorious. I felt empty. Because winning against your own blood doesn't feel like victory. It feels like confirmation. They were exactly who they showed themselves to be. And I was exactly who I built myself to become. The demolition order wasn't emotional. It was structural. And now, the foundation had shifted. The silence lasted 3 days. No calls. No threats. No emotional manipulation. Just quiet. Too quiet. I should have known that quiet from them never meant surrender. It meant planning. On the 4th morning, my assistant walked into my office holding a tablet. Her expression was tight. You might want to see this. She placed it on my desk. Headline. Cold-blooded heiress exploits dying billionaire uncle. I stared at the screen. There was my photo. From a conference last year. Sharp suit. Neutral expression. They used it like evidence. The article described me as manipulative. Emotionless. Calculated. It suggested I isolated Robert from his real family. It implied I coerced him during his final days. And at the bottom, anonymous sources close to the family. Anonymous. But I didn't need names. I knew the tone. I knew the voice. I leaned back in my chair. Slow breath in. Slow breath out. This wasn't grief. This was strategy. And strategy never feels personal until it works. The smear campaign. By afternoon, 3 more outlets picked up variations of the same story. Talk shows debated. Social media split into sides. Gold digger niece. Ungrateful child. She probably manipulated him. She must have known what she was doing. Interesting word. Manipulated. They always assume power is stolen by women. Never earned. My phone buzzed constantly. Not from my family. From clients. Board members. Investors. Concerned. Not accusatory. Concerned. Concern erodes confidence faster than anger. And that's what they were trying to do. If they couldn't take the estate, they would take credibility. And credibility was my real currency. The emergency meeting. By evening, my executive board requested a meeting. Not hostile, but cautious. We sat around the glass conference table in my firm's headquarters. 32 floors up. City visible beneath us. Is there any truth to the coercion claim? One board member asked gently. I didn't react emotionally. No. Another leaned forward. Will this impact public contracts? Only if we allow the narrative to solidify, I said calmly. Silence. They were watching me carefully. Assessing stability. The same way Robert once assessed me in the library. And I realized something in that moment. This wasn't just about my family anymore. This was my firm. My employees. Hundreds of families relying on the structure I built. I couldn't let personal chaos fracture professional authority. Give me 72 hours, I said. And don't make any public statements. They nodded. Trust still intact. But thinner. The direct confrontation. That night, I did something I hadn't done in 15 years. I called my father. He answered on the second ring. I could hear tension in his breathing. You're enjoying this, he snapped. No. You're humiliating us. You did that yourself. He scoffed. You think this ends here? Yes. It doesn't. There it was. Threat. You dragged our names through the mud. I released a contract you signed. You didn't have to make it public. Yes, I said calmly. I did. Silence. Then he lowered his voice. We can still fix this. Fix. Translation, negotiate. How? I asked. You release a statement saying Robert was mentally unstable. We settle privately. You keep the estate. We get a financial compensation for emotional damages. I almost laughed. Emotional damages. From the people who priced me at $500,000. You want me to lie? It's called managing perception. No. It's called fraud. And here's the thing about growing up invisible. You learn how people think before they speak. This wasn't desperation. This was habit. They were used to bending narratives. Rewriting history. Selling stories. And they believed I was still 13. Still desperate for their approval. You taught me something important, I said quietly. What? How to survive without you. And I hung up. The real countermove. They expected emotional retaliation. Public shouting. Interviews. Social media wars. I did none of that. Instead, I scheduled a press conference. Not defensive. Informational. Short. Precise. I walked onto the stage in a simple dark suit. No dramatic music. No tears. Just facts. I did not manipulate my uncle, I said calmly into the microphone. He mentored me. He educated me. He invested in me. And he legally adopted guardianship 15 years ago under a documented financial agreement signed by my biological parents. The room went silent. Cameras flashed. I held up a certified copy of the contract. Clear. Readable. Signatures visible. I have nothing to hide. Pause. But I will not apologize for inheriting what was intentionally given. I didn't insult them. Didn't mock them. Didn't defend emotionally. I presented structure. Architecture. And the narrative shifted. Not completely. But enough. Because facts under pressure feel solid. And solid wins over loud. The hidden strength. That night, alone in my office, I sat in the dark. City lights blinking outside. For the first time since the will reading. I felt tired. Not weak. Tired. Because fighting your own blood drains something deep. I leaned forward. Hands clasped. And I thought about 13-year-old me. In the cold kitchen. Staring at a frozen turkey. She survived without heat. Without power. Without parents. This was noise. I stood up. Walked to the window. And whispered something I had never said before. They can't hurt me anymore. Because they never actually had power. They only had access. And access was revoked. The unexpected ally. The next morning, something surprising happened. One of the journalists who had initially criticized me released a follow-up piece. Title: The Daughter Who Was Sold. It detailed the timeline. The documented loan. The custody clause. The gambling debts. Public sympathy shifted. Not dramatically. But steadily. The smear campaign weakened. And that's when they made their final move. The lawsuit. Filed officially. Claiming undue influence. Emotional exploitation. Mental instability of the deceased. They were trying to freeze assets. If successful, everything would be locked in litigation for years. That was the real attack. Not reputation. Liquidity. And liquidity meant power. I stood in my office holding the court filing. Slow breath. They weren't attacking emotionally anymore. They were attacking structurally. Good. Because structure was my specialty. I picked up the phone. Sterling, I said when he answered. They filed. I expected that, he replied. So did I. Pause. You're ready? Yes. Because here's what they didn't know. Robert didn't just leave me assets. He left me preparation. Contingency clauses. Irrevocable trusts. Legal fortifications layered like reinforced steel. He knew them. He predicted them. And he built against them. Just like he built me. The lawsuit wasn't going to destroy me. It was going to expose them further. But exposure comes at a cost. And the next move would decide everything. We stop here. Because the storm hasn't hit yet. The lawsuit is active. Assets are under scrutiny. And when family turns legal, there is no emotional safety net left. The lawsuit moved fast. They wanted speed. Speed creates pressure. Pressure creates mistakes. But they forgot something. Pressure also reveals integrity. And mine had been reinforced for 15 years. The courtroom. The courtroom was colder than I expected. Not emotionally. Physically. Air conditioned too low. Hard benches. Neutral walls. It felt like a place designed to strip people down to facts. My parents sat on the opposite side. Perfectly dressed. Controlled expressions. Susan held a tissue. Jeffrey's jaw was tight. Ashley and Jessica sat behind them, whispering. Still united. Still convinced they were right. I didn't look angry. I didn't look triumphant. I looked prepared. Because I was. The claim was clear. Undue influence. Emotional manipulation. Isolation of a vulnerable elderly man. Their lawyer painted a picture. A lonely billionaire. A calculating niece. A slow psychological takeover. It was almost impressive. If it hadn't been fiction. When it was our turn, Sterling stood. Calm. Measured. He didn't attack them personally. He attacked structure. He presented. Bank records. Timeline of guardianship transfer. Medical evaluations proving Robert's mental clarity. Video recordings of Robert discussing estate plans years before his illness. Witness testimony from business partners confirming my independent career long before the will. Then came the part they didn't expect. The trust documentation. Irrevocable. Filed 5 years before his death. Structured in layers. Even if the will were invalidated, the assets were already placed beyond their reach. Robert had anticipated litigation. He built around it. And in that moment, I understood something fully. He didn't just rescue me. He fortified me. The breaking point. Their lawyer tried one last tactic. He called Susan to the stand. She cried. She spoke about motherhood. About regret. About misunderstood decisions. She described the loan as temporary hardship. She framed the custody clause as symbolic. Symbolic. $500,000 for symbolism. When it was my turn to testify, I stood slowly. Walked to the stand. Placed my hand on the Bible. And told the truth. No drama. No venom. Just clarity. I was 13, I said. I was left alone for 10 days in a house without power. I received a group message from my parents boarding a flight. I paused. The room was silent. Years later, I learned that was the same day they signed away custody for $500,000. I looked at the judge. I don't hate them. That part surprised even me. I simply accepted what they chose. Then I turned slightly toward my parents. You didn't sell me because I wasn't lovable. I said it gently. You sold me because you valued something else more. Silence. Heavy. And here's the truth. Silence in a courtroom is power. Because it means no one can argue with what was just said. The judgment. The decision came 2 weeks later. Lawsuit dismissed. No evidence of coercion. Clear documentation. Valid transfer of guardianship. Trust structures upheld. Case closed. But something unexpected happened after the judge spoke. He looked at my parents and said, contracts reflect priorities. In this case, yours were documented. Not cruel. Not emotional. Just factual. And sometimes factual hurts more than insult. The hallway. Outside the courtroom, reporters waited. Microphones extended. Cameras ready. But I didn't speak to them. Not yet. Instead, I walked toward my parents. They looked smaller somehow. Not physically. Structurally. Jeffrey's shoulders were slumped. Susan avoided my eyes. Ashley and Jessica looked confused. Like the world had shifted without their permission. You won, Jeffrey muttered. I shook my head slightly. No. You destroyed us, Susan whispered. Again, I shook my head. You did that 15 years ago. I wasn't angry. And that's what unsettled them. Because anger means connection. Calm means closure. You could help us, Susan said quietly. There it was. The final attempt. Not apology. Request. I studied her face. For years, I had searched it for warmth. Approval. Recognition. Now I saw something else. Fear. Of consequences. I hope you find stability, I said calmly. But I am not your safety net. And I walked away. Not dramatically. Not fast. Just steady. Like I had the night Uncle Robert took me from the frozen kitchen. The ocean. That evening, I drove to the cliff house. The same one. Concrete. Glass. Ocean below. I stood on the balcony. Wind steady. Waves relentless. And I allowed myself something I had never allowed before. Grief. Not for them. For the version of me that once wanted them to choose differently. That girl waited for years. For a call. For an apology. For proof that she mattered. Now she had proof of something else. She survived. And survival is not small. It is not secondary. It is strength. The real inheritance. Robert didn't leave me money. Not really. He left me perspective. He taught me. Silence is data. Observation is power. Structure determines behavior. And control begins with clarity. My family thought they were selling a burden. What they really did was remove the obstacle. Because without their noise, their chaos, their conditional love, I built something unshakable. I built myself. The final press statement. The next morning, I faced the cameras. No anger. No performance. The case is closed, I said simply. My uncle made his decisions intentionally. I wish my family peace. Pause. And I wish anyone watching this who has ever felt discarded to understand something important. I looked directly into the camera. You are not the price someone assigns to you. You are the structure you build after. That quote traveled fast. Not because it was dramatic. Because it was true. If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe. This channel is built for people who feel deeply. And if you're still here, you're one of them. Because stories like this aren't just about money. They're about identity. About survival. About choosing who you become when the people who should protect you don't. And the next story? It might hit even harder. Final line. They thought they sold a daughter. What they really did was fund her foundation.